What's up? Welcome to my channel, Bree the Womannequin. I am Bree. It's nice to see you again, hopefully so soon after my last video. Today's video is a video that I have been thinking about making for a long time, but guess what? I was worried about how it would be perceived, and you'll find out why later. During the election, I was very surprised to hear my home county of Gwinnett, Georgia, was brought up as being one of the most diverse counties in the country. In my mind, I was like, that makes a lot of sense as to why I grew up to hate myself. I'm just kidding. I don't hate myself. But I was really frustrated with myself. I was really frustrated with my personality, and I really wanted to change. When I was 12 years old, I was getting off of the bus. My school was very diverse. In fact, walking up into the apartment complex, one of us was Mexican, one of us was Pakistani, two of us were black, including me, and one of the other guys was, I don't know what he was. He was Latino. He definitely wasn't Mexican, but he was Latino. The black boy called me an Oreo. I don't remember what I said. I don't know if I said something to him or not. I actually think I had a crush on him, but I remember he responded back with, well, you're an Oreo anyway. And he didn't say it to be funny. He wasn't trying to be cute. He was trying to hurt my feelings. And that was the first time in my life I'd ever heard that at 12 years old. And then I started hearing it all the time. Bitch. When I tell you, I was highly offended. So let me just explain to you what an Oreo is, okay? In case you don't know. Essentially, it's black on the outside and white on the inside. Did you catch the symbolism of my shirt? It is basically intra-community discrimination, saying that a black person acts white. So there are gonna be some people here who probably think there's nothing wrong with calling somebody an Oreo, whatever, you were just called that as a kid, get over it. That's true. I definitely should get over it. Why am I struggling with it so much? I'm actually struggling with a lot of these things that affected me as a child because I'm surprised I grew up and they're still affecting me as an adult, okay? I still have a really hard time relating to other black people. I know, that sucks. Except for my fellow Oreos. We see each other and we connect. But unfortunately, nothing sticks. Probably because we're all antisocial people. That's the thing. I think a lot of people who are Oreos are very much introverted and socially awkward, just like I was. Because part of what makes you an Oreo also is instead of spending a lot of time in your community talking with other people, you're probably spending a lot of time watching TV, looking at the internet, gathering these very diverse experiences, because that was me. So being called an Oreo made me absolutely disgusted with myself. And I really tried hard to double down into my blackness to prevent that from happening. It never worked. I was never black enough for black people. They always asked me, why do you talk like that? Oh, that's weird. Why are you interested in that? When I was in college and into K-pop before anybody else had even heard of it, before the name Blackpink was even uttered. In fact, Blackpink was probably still skipping rope on the playground and playing hopscotch or whatever it is kids do these days. I was like freaking jamming out to Girls' Generation, which is funny because Girls' Generation is Korean. It's not white. But it doesn't matter. That's not what being an Oreo is being about, okay? It's not just about sounding white. It's about being weird. I had this group of friends. One of them had a car. We were driving through downtown Atlanta, and they were like, Brianna, here, have the aux. I don't know. How do kids say it? Take the aux. Yeah, I don't know. So I was playing music, but my music was on shuffle, and the next song that came on was this song. And the girl turned it off. She's like, let me turn this off before we embarrass ourselves. And I just felt so embarrassed, especially when you're a person whose blackness has already been tested so many times in your life. I grew up in a very diverse area. Even though I went to different schools all throughout this county, my young childhood, elementary school, I would say there was an even mix of literally everything. There was an even mix of Asians, black people, Hispanic people, white people. I didn't think anything of it because that was what I was used to. It wasn't weird to me. But when I got to middle school, something happened. I started going to a predominantly white middle school. And also in middle school and that's like around puberty. That's the age where personalities are starting to solidify. I realized that I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be popular and I wanted to have a lot of friends. By the time I got to middle school, all of my friends were nerds. We would call them lame. They were the kids that still collected Pokemon cards, which was lame by the time you got to middle school. There were the kids playing video games, and not the cool video games. They were playing like Harvest Moon and stuff like that. And I say Harvest Moon a lot. I played a lot of Harvest Moon, okay? They weren't playing the cool games like Call of Duty and stuff. Most of them were white, but there was one other black girl there, and she got sick and she was out of school for a few weeks. And I was just there with all the rest of the white girls. I was like, I'm the only black girl here. And I felt very much like the black girl, and I didn't like it. I would like sit with my white friends at lunch and look over at the black table, and they would be like fun and laughing and stuff, because the kids had already started separating themselves out into different cliques by then, and I would yearn to be with them so bad. Not because I didn't like my white friends, but because I realized there was only so far I was going to be able to get being the only black girl in a white clique. I didn't do anything about it in 7th grade. I was aware of it, and my crush at the time was actually white. His name was Joe. He is a firefighter now. My God, he is so handsome. He grew up really good. He was really cute as a child, but he grew up to be a very handsome man. He's very happily married, so. Despite having a white crush at the time, I really wanted to be in with the black people. In 8th grade, I decided I was going to make the switch. My best friend at the time was a white girl, and just like the black girl, for some reason, she ended up getting sick and missing school for several weeks. During this time, I decided I wasn't going to talk to her anymore. She wasn't going to be my friend. She came back to school. I started being mean to her. I was short with her. It was like I was always hangry with her. Every response I had to anything she said was hangry, and I was just a bitch to her. And it's one of the things that I regret, honestly, the most in my childhood. Mallory, I'm so sorry. You did not deserve that. I was going through an identity crisis, and I was also 13, but I'm still sorry. But surprise, that didn't work. The black people didn't accept me because in their eyes, I was still the Oreo. Then I got to high school and I was like, perfect. Some of these people are people that don't know me at all. And that was the first time that I really started having black friends. And the only friends that I would allow myself to have, the black kids were from black areas. I don't know if they were from the hood, but they were freshly moving from black areas into these predominantly white schools. I had lived around diversity my entire life, and it was all I really knew. I did go to a black daycare every single year, and I did have a completely black family, bitch. Everything that I did outside of school that was related to my family was black. We did a lot of black people things. I watched a lot of black shows on TV. Okay, I watched all of UPN. I watched all those shows. We only listened to black radio stations in my house. If you lived in Atlanta in the 2000s, you will know that V103 and 95.5 The Beat only played black music, and those were the only channels that my family watched. Especially if you were listening to V103 with Frank and Wanda, you were definitely black, okay? But that didn't matter. The actual culture that I had didn't seem to matter because they didn't like that I liked to read fantasy novels and I liked to watch anime. That was a turnoff to a lot of black people. They felt like they couldn't relate to that. I've said this before in other videos, but I feel like a lot of black kids are forced to grow up very early because I think the parents put them in mature situations a lot earlier than a lot of, I would say, white parents. And I just don't think that they get to be kids for as long. They were going through their puberty, adulthood transition way before I was. And not only that, but I just was like, I liked being a kid and I liked doing kid things. So I got teased for, like I said, reading books. I got teased for drawing. I used to like to draw characters. But I think mostly what got people was the way that I spoke. And I tried my best, bitch, to change it. I went from calling my mom mom to mama. I would say it like very black. My favorite movie in high school was ATL with T.I. and Lauren Lennon. That was my favorite movie. And I still have a lot of love for that movie. What You Know is still one of my favorite songs. But that's the other thing, bitch. The top 5 of my favorite songs are all by black people. That's my culture. It just is my culture. There is no proving it. I've had to learn to code switch around black people to make black people feel comfortable with me. A lot of times it'll be black women especially, but a black woman will say something about my hair, or say, oh, I like your hair. And I'll be like, oh, thank you. Especially if she says the word locks. Oh, I like your locks. then I definitely will be like, gotta talk to her in AAVE, and it'll be a nice experience. I just hate feeling like I have to do that in order to get through the interaction, just as much as I don't like having a code switch for white people. Because I have red locks, a lot of people automatically assume that I'm a certain level of blackness, which makes me feel great because I'm like, I could just talk. So that when I talk, they're thinking I'm gonna be somewhere here with the blackness, but when I talk, I'm actually somewhere like here, and they're like pleasantly surprised. Oh, you can see it in their face, the relief, when I actually sound more like them than they thought that I was gonna sound. And it's really funny. But with black people, I think the hair actually helps a lot doing half of the work of what they're gonna expect, because they see the red locks and they also think that I'm gonna be here. But instead of me being here and them being disappointed, I just meet them there. I meet every black person where they're at, and I think it is a trauma response from being called an Oreo. You might be thinking like, girl, it's not that deep. Okay, maybe it's not that deep for you. I swear, when people say something that really bothers me is not that deep, it just makes me want to impale them with this pin and be like, well, it's not that deep, bitch. I'm just kidding. I'm not a violent person. I've never been in a fight in my life. Obviously, I grew up in the suburbs. But yeah, I would love for it to not be that deep. I think it would have been different if things had ever changed. But once I got into college, bitch, people were still treating me like that. I didn't hate college, but I hate how being in college made me feel about myself. I still, to this day, do not feel like I could just talk to a black person in my regular voice and them in their head not think somewhere, why does she sound like that? Like I said, people be expecting up here and I be coming here, and that's just not enough. If this is white, because obviously white is the opposite of black. Duh. Don't you know that there are only two races? Okay. Race is binary. But I was going to say, I guess that means I'm racially non-binary, but no. But if white is here and black is here, then obviously I'm somewhere here. Okay. Obviously. The reality is I'm probably somewhere like over here. Don't categorize me. All right. So I found this little excerpt to read from Affinity magazine and I thought it was interesting. They're saying an Oreo is a kid who listens to Coldplay instead of Kodak Black. I used to listen to Kodak Black. Who reads Harry Potter instead of playing 2K. I read Harry Potter, read all the Harry Potters, watched all the movies. Wants to study chemistry instead of pursuing an athletic scholarship. Do you want better? Got a fine arts degree so I could grow up to become a nothing. Is referred to as an Oreo bounty. What the hell is bounty? Are you talking about the paper towels? No, I'm gonna have to look that up. Or coconut. Girl, a bounty is a chocolate that looks like a fucking Mounds bar, where it's coconut on the inside and chocolate on the outside. It looks delicious. At least they're calling us delicious things. It also says the reason why this is damaging is because it means that some black children are coaxed into pretending to enjoy things they don't, which means that their true ambitions and interests aren't fully explored. This creates a lack of diversification within black communities and can, along with facts such as racial prejudice and an imbalanced education system, be partially responsible for the lack of black lawyers, the lack of black physicians, and the lack of black CEOs in the US. I read a couple of articles about Oreos. The vibe that I've been getting so far is that it sounds like the audience is white people and telling white people why calling black people an Oreo is offensive. I've not ever in my life had a white person call me an Oreo. That is something that only happens within the black community. Just like I've never heard a white person call someone an African booty scratcher. That's an African American term, sweetie. I told my white friend that I was called an Oreo when I was a kid, and she thought it meant that I was mixed. She still does. I've told her several times I am not mixed. I think it's confusing her because I tell her I'm not mixed, but then I always say I'm an Oreo, and she doesn't realize that Oreo is just a black person who acts white and not a mixed person. But that just goes to show you that white people don't really know that term. But it mentions here some of that being one of the good ones. My God, I get that vibe from white people all the time. In fact, some of my racist white friends, yes, I have racist white friends. I made a whole video on how to keep your racist friends, because how are they supposed to learn if I don't teach them? But there's definitely something that I resonate with in here where it says the reason why it's damaging is because it means that some black children are coaxed into pretending to enjoy things that they don't, which means that their true ambitions and interests aren't fully explored. Do you know how much stuff I did in my life for black people to like me just because it was a black thing to do when I probably was not even interested in it in the first place. I was watching a video today. She's actually not black. I'm actually going to make my own separate video on it, but it's a video by someone called Duthy, right? Duthy? Get out my notes. Yes, Duthy. Her video is called Congrats, You Have No Personality. And I wanted to make a video about it, about being cringe versus being boring. And something that I noticed is that something about black culture is it is better to be boring than to be cringe. I want to make a whole separate video on that, but that is definitely the vibe that I got from being a person within black culture. I really withheld a lot of my creativity, a lot of my individual thoughts. I wasn't successful at it, but I really tried to withhold the truer parts, the more authentic parts of myself, because I wanted black people, specifically black people, to accept me. I didn't want them to think that I was weird. Ultimately, I will say, I think I was trying to be friends with the wrong black people, but I think that overall, the majority of black people still have some biases towards people who talk like me and think like me, really, that makes it hard for me to feel like they would accept me and my friendship. Like I said, I gave up on trying to be friends with black people when I was 26 years old. That's not to say I don't have black friends. I do have black friends. It's just, I no longer try to conform who I am to fit into what I think a black person needs to see. Honestly, there will be some black people that are cool with me on the internet, but actually are not cool with me in real life. There are a couple of people now who I know watch my stories, they'll comment on my stories, and I'm like, you don't talk to me in real life. What are you doing? We're friends online when we're in this vacuum and all the quirky, weird shit that I do feels like it's a character on TV. But when you're interacting with me in real life, you think I'm cringe and you don't really want to talk to me or acknowledge me. And I hate that shit. That shit makes me want to fucking... Anyway. It's not white people calling people Oreos. It's other black people. I just feel like, why do I even have to say that? That should be so obvious. I feel like these few articles I've been reading are being so disingenuous. I hate that. Stop victimizing black people when black people victimize each other. Stop adding that extra layer because you're making the actual racism and victimization of black people by other races, including white people, including everybody, because everybody has issues with black people and black culture. So times when that actually happens feels flat because we're having to combat these extra trumped up charges you done put on here. That the real shit gets buried underneath. Nobody's calling black people Oreos but other black people, so talk to them. To keep going with this article on Affinity magazine, they say, what's even more reprehensible is the fact that this suppression of potential within black communities comes predominantly from black people themselves. I read a few that was definitely making it seem like white people were calling black people Oreos. It often derives from an assumption that those who attempt to reach beyond the confines of society's understanding of a black person are sellouts, or an uppity black. That's a very dated term. To be black, according to some, you have to be entirely down with the struggle. You shouldn't see life beyond the estate or the hood unless it's through means of entertainment, music, or sports. To want to be a writer, which I am, a lawyer, or God forbid, a police officer. You're fruity or weird. I don't know. Are people being called fruity? I guess maybe the men are. I don't know. To strip someone of their blackness treats us as though we're commodities, something batch made and generic that if you don't fit a particular set of qualities, then you're not really black, are you? As for wanting to be a part of the hood, I wanted to be from the hood so bad. I'm from a city in Georgia called Decatur.
Decatur wears great.
When I was young, I don't know what the situation is now. Decatur's hella gentrified now. But when I was born, that was like the hood. And I remember one time I brought my birth certificate into school for a project that we had to do. And a black kid looked at my birth certificate. And he was like, "You're from Decatur?" And that was the first time I realized that being from a black place was going to gain me bonus points with black people. So I tried to squeeze it in whenever I could. I would be like, "Oh yeah, I'm from Decatur."
Decatur wears great.
because I wanted to fit in. I just thought the best place to fit in was somewhere where I would be a shoo-in. And I'm like, I'm black, they're black, I listen to rap, they listen to rap, I watch 106 in Park, they watch 106 in Park, it'll be great. Bitch, no, that's not enough. I didn't have the mannerisms, and I watched way too much cartoons. I know what I should have done to bridge the gap, because I saw a girl do it. There was a girl, she was really shy, just like me. She used to read books. Me and her actually talked one day because we found out we were reading the same book. What she did is she started dating one of the popular black guys. And this man was butt ugly. Through dating him, she got to know the other black people and they got to be familiar with her. And by the time we were seniors, this bitch was popular. And I was like, damn, I should have did that shit. If I really wanted to be popular, should have just used some guy. Would I have done it? I think I probably wouldn't have. I can do a terrible thing in the moment, but I couldn't do something terrible premeditated. Back to the task at hand, because I got so distracted. But it definitely makes you feel like you don't want to pursue academic pursuits. You don't want to make too good of grades in school. You don't want to look like you're trying too hard. There was an idea that Duthie was talking about, and I'm going to probably make it into one of my other videos. It's called It's Not That Deep. My little brother is far more integrated into black culture. My little brother is 16, 17. He's firmly within Gen Z, and he is living the life that I would have loved to have lived. His grades are not good, and we are the opposite in that regard. Where he is flourishing socially, he is not doing so well academically. And he puts a lot of weight on social interactions and things in a way that I couldn't because I just didn't have that option. It was really hard for me to make friends. Not only was I called an Oreo, but I was sheltered, so I couldn't really go anywhere or do anything anyway. But you don't want to do something because it's lame, You're like, I don't want to take school too seriously. I don't want to take this hobby that I'm into too seriously because I don't want people to make fun of me because it's not that deep. Okay, I found another article where it says terms like coconut and Oreo, meaning brown on the outside, white on the inside. I'm like, wait a minute. And I see it's from stylist.co.uk. So apparently people in the UK are being called coconuts. And I assume, what's that other thing I said? Mounds bars. That's not it. Bounties. They're being called coconuts and bounties across the pond. Sorry, I just realized I have strawberries on the stove. Let me go get my strawberries burned. I'm so sad. I feel like it ultimately boils down to this statement right here. I'm not black enough for my community, but I'm still an outsider with my white friends. I live in downtown Atlanta. I live in a very diverse area, so I have all types of friends. I have friends from all ethnicities. But if you live in a place or an area where everybody is very segregated, then I can only imagine how hard that must be. I'm sure that's also part of the reason why I'm single. Even though Atlanta is very diverse in terms of making friends, there's definitely the feeling that Atlanta is very black. It's a great place for people who are black and are of black culture. I feel like there's a lot more diversity within whiteness, and I envy that shit. Like, I feel like I would have been found my tribe if I was white. I feel like white people really get the freedom because they're the majority. They really get the freedom to like be who they want to be. And also, thing about white culture that I love really is that they encourage people to be individuals and to be unique. And that is not what I experienced inside of black culture. I experienced a lot of pressure to conform and being outcasted when I did not. Does that make me resent my own people? Bitch, I'm gonna be honest, yes. Oh my God, I'm so frustrated. Do I put white people on this pedestal? No. But I think that there are some things that we can definitely learn from them. Like, it's okay to have diverse interests and it's okay to be weird. I think maybe just we're a minority, and when you are the black sheep, you're a minority within a minority. I'm at an age right now where I genuinely think it's odd to just be friends with somebody just based off of the fact that you share a race. That is not enough for me to be friends with somebody anymore. Now I choose all of my friends based off of, do I like them? Do they make me happy? Do they bring me joy? And things like that. And also there's this sense that, yes, I'm an outsider with white people or any other race really. It's like I said, I don't know why people make race a binary, but at least I know where I stand with them. I never got to the point where I felt accepted by black people. That never happened. I'm not invited to the cookout. That is not an exaggeration. I don't think I've ever been to a cookout. I can't relate. I don't feel valued within black culture, but I also don't feel valued by anybody. I don't feel like anybody values the person that I am. And that's why I say I never found my tribe. I really just feel like I'm adrift in this sea of honestly what is lonely. It's very lonely to be an Oreo, and it sucks because we're humans. We're meant to be a part of a tribe. We are meant to interact with other people. We're not meant to be alone. Okay, so I see a coconut is someone who is Indian because they're brown on the outside. I'm reading something where it says these stereotypes prevent people from being their true authentic selves because they feel as though they have to fit into a very narrow mold. And she spelt mold with a U. Ugh. Something that I do like that this article mentions is, if you've been on the receiving end of these racial slurs, Dr. Misty offers a reminder that they say a lot more about the person who is dishing them out than you. They're expressing discomfort because you're not acting in a way that they think you should. That is exactly what it is. You're making this other person feel uncomfortable with your you-ness. She says if you feel able to, she suggests calling them out and letting them know how their comments affected you. Don't do that. You will get bullied mercilessly if you did that. It really hurt my feelings when you called me an Oreo. No, don't do it. My advice would be double down, bitch. Be like, yeah, I am an Oreo. What, bitch? How many books did you read? Oh, I would so say that. Man, little Brianna would. I could help her out so much. So I'm reading this story on, is it called Our Social Skills? I still don't know how to read the Reddit post names, the Reddit thread names. It says being an Oreo, being a black person who doesn't act like the stereotypical black person. I always feel like I need to change certain aspects of myself and fake myself even more on top of my anxiety. And this applies to when I'm with both white and black people, even though I feel like white people don't mind as much. Every single time I start to open to people and start revealing who I truly am, people say I am the whitest black person they've ever met, even though I'm literally just being myself. I even have a separate Spotify playlist for me to show my black music to other black people so I don't face ridicule. I listen to quite a lot of Korean and Japanese music. Same. As a result, these days, I've started to isolate myself more in my house where I can just enjoy myself without ridicule. Anyone feel the same? Me, I definitely feel the same. God, my dog is being annoying. There's a person that says, same, technically Hispanic, but didn't grow up speaking Spanish and lived in diverse neighborhoods my entire life. I can only imagine what it must be like to be a Hispanic person that doesn't know Spanish. There's so much about Hispanic culture that revolves around speaking the language, so I can't even imagine how isolating that must feel. I've seen being an Oreo described as cultural homelessness, which, bitch, that resonates with me intensely. I definitely feel culturally homeless. I think the worst part is that I thought it was going to get better as I got older. And I think that if I had known that it was never going to change, I would have stopped trying so much earlier and I would have started working towards self-acceptance a lot sooner. I think that I always thought black people were eventually going to start liking me because I was being a pick-me for them. Eventually, I'll meet the right people. Normally, like I said, I've been saying this a few times, normally when people are talking about racism and racism that black people receive, it's always from white people. But literally, I've discovered through my various friend groups and people that I've been around, nobody respects black people. They think that we're all beneath them, is what I've learned. That means the Hispanics, that means the Asians, all of them. Nobody really respects black people, okay? But something that I think is interesting, this idea that there are black people who have spent so much time being called things like ghetto and ratchet and hood and being labeled these things that have deeply scarred them for enjoying the black things that they do enjoy, that they feel like they have to protect that identity. And a lot of people have decided to protect that identity by doubling down on their blackness. What, I'm ratchet? Yes, I am ratchet. Watch me twerk upside down on a wall. I've done that, and I still wasn't black enough. Watch me rap some Megan Thee Stallion lyrics on top of a table. These are all things that I've seen in real life, but I definitely get that sense from a lot of black people, and I think black people are really defensive about their black identity, which is very understandable. I know I've said a lot about how much it sucks to be an Oreo and how I hate it, and I wish that people would not make fun of people for being Oreos, but I get it. It comes from a place of, first of all, humans are tribalistic. That's how we have existed for thousands of years. We're all very tribalistic, which just means we want everybody to be mostly the same. Most humans are conservative. We want people to be like us. We want people to exist like us and keep our traditions and things like that. Most people don't really want to do work when they meet new people or when they're interacting with people. So if somebody has to treat you differently than they treat everybody else, or if somebody has to have different expectations on how a situation or a conversation might go with you versus everybody else, that might frustrate them, right? So they're putting you in this difficult category. And then especially if you live in a country that's predominated by white people and white culture, here Black people are trying to have and enjoy and protect their culture when somebody who is inside of their group, their demographic, is acting in a way that the predominant privileged majority is acting. I could see how that would upset some people, and I could see how that would make people feel threatened, and I get it because I agreed with that for a very long time. For the longest time, I would rather have extricated the Oreo parts of my personality and just left the Black pulp that was left over and be accepted by my community than to force my community to just embrace me as I was. That's what old me would have preferred. The current me, I think I'm just too far separate from culture now. When I turned 26, I effectively decided I'm gonna stop trying to appease Black people. I just had enough. I remember there was a party that the Black people on my job had, and they invited everybody. They invited all my Latina friends, all the Latino people at my job, and they did not invite me. And so when I had a party at my house, I invited all my friends, which were predominantly Latina. I remember the next day or the next week, one of the Black girls who had thrown the party was like, I heard you had a little shindig at your house. Why didn't you invite me? And I said to her face, and this was at work in front of a group of people, I was like, when you had your party, you didn't invite me, so I just thought you didn't fuck with me like that. And she didn't have anything to say. And she walked out, and I needed it for my soul. And I stopped trying to impress Black people. Like I said, everybody's racist towards Black people. It feels different when a culture that is not the one that you grew up with is isolating you, or I guess believe stereotypes about your culture, right? Versus when the culture that you've grown up in or raised in, identify the most with, is ostracizing you or isolating you or separating you. It feels different. Now, my friends are very diverse. I'm gonna be honest. I have a lot of white friends now, and they don't always get it. I can tell that they're patient with the things that they don't know. And I, in turn, are patient with the things that they don't know. And I appreciate that they respect me enough to want to be respectful to me. Most of my white friends don't say horrifically racist things in front of me. Sometimes if they let something slip, one of them in particular is very young. She said quite a few ignorant things, and I just gotta let her know, yo, you can't say that. In conclusion with this story, I'm still on my own authentic self journey. I'm really finally just trying to release the shackles of being called an Oreo my entire life and letting that really affect me to the point where it's paralyzed me in certain areas of my life. I'm really discovering, who am I? There was so much about myself that I didn't realize wasn't authentic to me. It was all extra stuff that I had added to my personality during the period of my life when I was trying to be Black. And I didn't realize that it wasn't authentic to me until I really stopped and I thought, I'm like, am I doing this because I want to do this? Why am I actually doing this? It's been a great journey and I've really loved it. And I want to finish on a quote from our social skills in Reddit, in the Threadit. It's from a deleted user. It only got 3 upvotes, but I really like how this person worded it. If you made it this far, I just thought this would help any Black person out there who is struggling with their identity, struggling with feeling like an Oreo or like you're not being accepted by Black people. It says, our ancestors went through so much so we could have the right to be these Oreo people and explore your own self-interest. And I'm like, girl, that's it. My last story. I had an incredibly vivid dream one time. It lasted all of 5 seconds. And I don't know if there was some spiritual thing going on, I don't know. But I had a dream that I was a slave on a slave ship and I felt every feeling of it. I was like chained down and I was laying down and I was surrounded by people and there was just barely enough space above me and I felt incredibly claustrophobic and like I couldn't breathe and I felt like I was gonna die and I was like chained up so I couldn't move. I cannot believe they did that the people, oh my God, for months. Can you imagine? And I never really understood why I had that dream. I was like, man, that was such a random, vivid dream for me to have out of nowhere. Because I never had a dream like that before. I wonder if maybe that's the moral? I don't know. But it is crazy to think about that all the shit that your ancestors had to go through so that you could have the privilege of being called an Oreo. How dare someone call you diverse, well-read, well-spoken, and educated? Makes me also wonder if somebody calling somebody an Oreo is coming from a jealous place as well. A little hatred for the privilege that somebody is perceived as having just by virtue of them speaking with a Caucasian affectation. Somebody hears that you sound like you've been around white people your whole life, and I guess that's enough for them to think you're privileged, you're soft, you've had a soft life, and I could see why somebody would feel jealous of that. So I would say also for people who are being called Oreos, maybe you have some compassion towards the people that are calling them that. Obviously, do not bow to a bully. Don't do that. Like I said, they call me an Oreo. But if little Brianna was back in time, I would double down on that shit and I would make them feel bad. But I would try to be patient before it got that far. Hopefully this video helps you, and if you're on your own journey, you're not alone. Obviously, we're out here in the world somewhere. I know we're not all next to each other, but we are here on the internet and we can talk to each other via that way. Aren't we so lucky to exist during a time where we can talk on the internet with each other? That's great. So I think originally that's what I really wanted. I really wanted to create a community for people to be able to come and help each other not feel so alone. Because bitch, I'd be lonely. I'm not even gonna lie. I know how to make friends now, but it would be great to talk to people who have some similar experiences. Give me your experiences in the comments. Definitely, I would love to hear it. I always love hearing solidarity. What do you think about, if you're a person who calls people Oreos, what do you think about that? Why do you feel like that's okay? Do you think that Oreo is a slur? That's very interesting that I learned that it's being considered a slur. I just thought it was like a mean thing you called somebody, like when you call somebody a nerd. But what are your experiences if you've been called an Oreo? I would love to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you can see more content from me. I would love to have you here as part of my humannequins. That's what I'm calling my subs. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you next time.